SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
The results still aren't official and the margin is razor thin, but it sure looks like online and retail sports betting is coming to Missouri. We've got all the news you need to know about Amendment 2, the Show Me State sports betting launch, and what state could be next on today's episode of iGaming Daily. iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, the #1 CRM and marketing solution for the iGaming market. I am Jessica Welman, editor of SBC Americas, joined by media manager Charlie Horner. Charlie, did you watch the election at all for the U.S.? Were you interested in the slightest?
Yeah, as a bit of a politics geek, I was
okay.
closely following the election. Of course, the sports betting election result. Nothing else big happened that day, right?
I'll be honest. I was watching the Missouri one because I was ready to go to bed, and I'm like, "Come on, man, let's go ahead and call it." And it was so close that I was on Central Time this week, so same time zone as Missouri. 1 a.m., not close enough. 2 a.m., not close enough. At 3 a.m., I was like, I'm going to stop waking up every hour. I think I'm just going to get up at this point and write it in the morning. And by the time I woke up around 6:30, they called it, but like it was close. As of this very moment, I believe the margin of difference is less than 5,000 votes
Wow.
in a race in which a little short of 3 million people voted, 2.9 million or so.
So
2,932,000 people voted. The differential is less than 4,000 votes.
Wow. That's remarkable.
It is razor thin. Wednesday morning, we were at like 7,000. Now we're down to a little lower than 5,000. Civics lesson time. For those who are curious, technically these results are still unofficial, and the precincts they'll double check everything, certify their results, and those are due to the state this coming Tuesday. And at that point, the Secretary of State, John Ashcroft, will certify them, and it will be official. It doesn't seem like it's going to change. And technically, if somebody wanted to, they could ask for a recount because the threshold is so low. The main group against sports betting in Missouri has said they don't really intend to do that. You got to pay for the recount if you want to do it, and you've got 20 days. So somebody could come out of the woodwork and say, I'd like to recount them, but for now, doesn't seem all that likely.
Yeah, it would be especially if you have to foot the bill, it would be take a big person to come forward and
I don't know how much I would charge to count 2.9 million things, but who knows? It's bureaucracy. I'm sure they'd find a way to make it expensive. We didn't really get a good sense from polling how this measure was going to do. We always were seeing that like 50% supported it, 20% were kind of indifferent, maybe 30% was against. Did you expect this to go through? I know you probably weren't following it too closely, but
I think the one thing that I really noted that made me think that it was close was the fact that there was a big sort of last minute donation to the Yes campaign. I believe it was another injection of cash from the sports teams.
Yeah.
A couple of days before the election day. So that kind of gives you a signal that it might be close. And the sports teams just want to get a little bit more campaigning dollars in there to try and swing it in that direction.
Then the campaign against had pulled ads in the weeks leading up. They pulled about $1 million worth of ads. So a lot of mixed messages coming out of this one.
Yeah. And I'd imagine if you're the person who decided to pull those ads, now looking at the result and seeing how razor thin it is, potentially that could have made the difference for the result, really.
As someone who is so sick of political ads, I'm going to say maybe they just decided there are too many dang ads and it's just not worth it. And we're not seeing a response because times in my life that a political television ad has made me go, oh, I should rethink my position on this. Maybe zero, I'm thinking. There might be one I've forgotten about on like a local measure, like something like this, but people have their minds made up, you know?
Yeah, I'm very glad that we don't do those
it's nonstop.
Sort of political ads on TV and radio and things like that in the UK like you do there.
All right, so it was a very narrow victory, but we did get a new state for sports betting. So how would you categorize how big a victory was this for the gaming industry?
Well, I think you've got to take the wins where you can get them in this climate. So I think in that regard, it's a big win. Obviously, the home of the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champions. I mean, huge fan base. So you know that's a big market to go after. I guess those fans could have just hopped over into Kansas to place their bets, but for them to be able to do it on the home state is a positive for them. Yeah, it's a new market, and it's something that we weren't necessarily expecting throughout this year. For us to get a new state after a pretty quiet legislative season at the start of the year. So I think, yeah, it's a big win. How about you, Jess? How would you assess how big this moment is? It's
a win for sure. Especially given that they had tried legislatively so many ways to do this. And Denny Hoskins, who coincidentally is going to be the new Secretary of State in January, was one of a couple of people that were just very obstructionist about this. They want VLTs. They wanted to horse trade. And so, like, props to the teams and the operators that they were able to get a version of this done when legislators couldn't. A version of this, by the way, that is like so favorable to them. There's going to be up to 22 operators. You get a license per sports team, a license per land-based casino, and, 2 standalone online licenses.
Oh, wow.
That's like, I wonder who those are going to go to. A tax rate of 10%. It sounds like promo cred deductions are in play. So, like, very low barrier to entry here, which is good for small operators. I will note, like, one group of Democrats, I think, rightfully pointed out there are scenarios where, especially at launch, you're talking about companies that are going to pay like zero tax dollars. So this whole like education, we need to teach the children thing is a good angle. How much money this very favorable bill actually brings in, who knows? So good for them getting a very good bill for the industry passed.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
To me, when this was very close early in the night, I tweeted this. You narrowly avoided disaster. This was like Props 26 and 27, record-setting spending on a ballot initiative on both the for and against side. But the against side spent like $15 million. The for side spent well over 40. The previous record for a campaign to get an initiative passed was like 31 million. You spent a lot of money and you almost lost. So I do think that there is a grain of salt here that, like, some of these states where we're going to need a ballot initiative, potentially Georgia, definitely California, some of these others, you have to worry that the sentiment for sports betting is maybe not there.
Yeah, I mean, and particularly as you mentioned earlier, that you can't really package this as a tax raising mechanism if the bill is so favourable for the operators. So in the public relations messaging, the campaigning, you're struggling to make that much of a dent. But yeah, you're right. It was a close one. and they're going to have to be confident if they're going to move again in California or go for the constitutional amendment in Georgia as well.
Yeah. It's a win, end of the day. I don't think this is something that the industry is thoroughly patting themselves on the back about because, again, the margin was so narrow. The upside, though, this bill is insanely favorable to operators, relatively low license fees, these standalone licenses. I understand why Caesars Entertainment in particular was an operator that was just like, we don't like this version of this. We would like multiple skins for our casinos. We feel like we're not getting enough out of it. It was kind of the first time we've seen casinos that are not that interested in sports betting oppose sports betting bills. I think this is the first time I've seen an operator that is very much a player be like, nah, I don't think we like this.
I mean, particularly if they have a land-based presence in the state, there's that whole cannibalization argument. I know it's sports book versus casino. It's slightly different, but there is that argument there. And, there's not going to be, I know you said earlier that there's like 22, up to 22 licenses. There isn't going to be that many operators that go in there, I'm sure. But it will still be a very competitive place. We all know who's going to be in there. And Caesars probably think, yeah, maybe it's not worth it.
I mean, they'll go in there for sure. But the skins thing, you're right. I'm just like, you're not going to get 22 operators. I think the bigger issue is teams and these two standalone licenses mean that you are depriving casinos of deals with FanDuel, DraftKings, and some of these other people. And you're providing them either a direct path to entry or a path of entry through a sports team that I would think the casino industry argues like, we do more for gambling. This should be ours. For those who don't understand, like, market access rights are a very real thing. Just go listen to Boyd's earnings call because they have a longstanding deal with FanDuel on market access and they make quite a lot of money off of it. The reason Kentucky did sports betting is not for operators or for horse racing tracks in Kentucky to make money doing sports betting. It's for the license or the market access fees that they charge partners. So I get it. And I think this also kind of signifies that we're reaching the point of maturity in this industry where we are long, the days of any old bill will do are kind of long gone. So I'm curious now, can we do a ballot initiative in a state that's not going to be the most expensive thing they've ever seen?
I think the last two ballot initiatives that we've seen has probably shown that no, we can't. Obviously, we had Missouri and then the record shattering spend that we saw in California as well. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. I think there's going to be a lot of money spent on both sides wherever this goes next.
You also, like, with an industry that is increasingly getting more and more flack for how much it advertises, it is kind of funny that they are, like, also blowing up people's televisions to get them to vote for it, which I would think, only turns people off more. It's a fairly bipartisan kind of issue, sports betting, but I do think it's worth noting overall election trends for the country. It wasn't that like more people voted for Trump than last time. It's actually that fewer people voted. I think there's a lot of people that were kind of in the middle that were just like, I hate both of these people and I'm not going to go vote. But we did see kind of right-leaning people come out more than left-leaning people did for this particular election. So maybe that helps explain why it was a little bit closer, because they might be a little more of the religious right that opposes these sorts of things. And it might be a little easier for the future. But I think, Colorado, I think we called that one within a couple hours of results getting in. It was clear it was going to pass. I believe Virginia, it was similar the night of. We knew very quickly that this was going to pass, that the popularity around this is waning. To give a little insight on the process for Missouri now, they will certify these election results and then Missouri gaming regulators have until December, technically, to launch. That is the deadline written into the ballot initiative. I wouldn't be surprised if they push for September so that football season is on the books for them. So that's kind of the timeline on this. Charlie, I wrote the list in our notes, but there are 11 states left to legalize. Which ones of these did you know hadn't been legalized yet? And I'm sure you've forgotten about a lot of the other ones.
I think most of these I'd have recalled just because of the sheer number of conversations that we've had on this podcast about some of these. I mean, Georgia, I think one of the first ever episodes we did was on Georgia, and obviously California. You're never going to get the Alabamas and the Utahs of Hawaii,
the world I don't think
change
that's
their
happening.
minds.
Yeah.
No. So really, we are left with a very small number of states that realistically could flip.
Yeah. I mean, the states left there are 11 left. California, Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, Oklahoma. I think those are the 5 everybody has their eye on, and there's actually a possibility it happens. Then we have South Carolina, Alabama, Idaho, Utah, Alaska, Hawaii. So 5, maybe 6. Alabama has its discussions here and there about gambling. Idaho, I think it's a lot like Utah. There's a lot of very religious people there. It's also just not a big state. So at a point, if you're the government relations team, you're like, is it worth schlepping to Idaho to make this happen? So we're running out of states to legalize, at least on the sports betting front. On the iGaming front, much different story. So perhaps, I mean, I don't know if it's even worth you can put more resources there. I don't know if you'd really change the end result, though, with iGaming hesitancy, right?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. US has been really embracing of sports betting, but has really struggled on the iGaming front. So I don't know how you change the perception with lawmakers on that one, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who have experience of the 7 states who have legalized who could give a lot of good advice. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think sports betting helps iGaming on this one because they've seen how it's shaken out, where there are these 2 big players and then everyone else, and that local people and local casinos have not really, with rare exception, found too many places to thrive. I will say, if you do follow iGaming results, it does seem like there's a lot more room for a plurality of operators to keep going versus you don't hear about online casinos shutting down all that often. There's room, and people like to play different brands and different games, and you can diversify the offering so much more than you can a sports book. That perhaps that's the sell of it. But that is a conversation for, 2 months from now when we do some sort of legislative preview. In the meantime, we have the rundown of all of the election stuff, how much was wagered on Robinhood and Kalshi, which is like millions and millions. The recap of Missouri, the recap of Colorado, where voters appealed to. Essentially, there was a point where they were supposed to refund operators because they went over the sports betting tax threshold, and the voters were like, nah, man, we're going to keep that money. So can run down that. In your side of the business, Charlie, what should people be checking out and reading?
Well, for SBC Americas this week, I did an interview with Nick Patrick, who is the CEO of Radar, a geolocation service provider looking to provide an alternative on the market. And of course, with Missouri launching sports betting next year, I'm sure there'll be lots of geolocation checks in Missouri. So if you're interested in that side of the industry, be sure to check that one out. It's an interesting read.
All right, guys, that's a wrap for today's episode of iGaming Daily. Enjoy your weekend and be sure to check back in on Monday with a fresh round of headlines and another new episode with the latest news from around the gaming world.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.